We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather today, the Garangal people of the Guringai Nation, and pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise Aboriginal people as the original custodians of this land.
Do it better with CommBox.
Hi everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Whether you're here as an end user exploring what's possible in your classroom or space, or as one of our valued reseller partners, we're really glad to have you. I'm Leah and I will be your host for today's session. We've got an exciting one lined up. We're diving into KaiBot from Kai's Education and how it pairs perfectly with the CommBox Interactive Classic S5 to bring next level interactivity to your spaces. Before we get into the good stuff, let's meet the people leading today's conversation. I'll be handing you over to Tina, our Chief of Revenue, who's going to sit down with two very special guests from Kai's Education. Today, we've got Ronelle and Bruce, both co-founders, joining us. Over to you, Tina.
All right, before we dive in, if you both could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Kai's Education. For those who might not know, I would love to hear about your mission and what it is that you're doing specifically in the Australian and New Zealand markets.
So, shall I start? I'm Bruce. I'm the co-founder of Kai's Education, and my passion comes from when I was back in school, and I was. And I still am seen as the naughty and disruptive child/adult in the classroom. So I had ADHD. I still do it, by the way. I'm half blind, so I really struggled to learn in a way that the classroom was built back then, and I could not always see what was being presented. I found it difficult to stay engaged. And I didn't follow traditional learning methods. So I was struggling, right? People just labeled me as naughty, put me in that corner, and I was left out of learning. So coding changed that for me, right? How did coding change that for me when I was being disruptive and all that? Well, I started as a hobby and teaching myself. And at 12 years old, and for the first time, I found a way that the coding actually allowed me to experiment, make mistakes, fail, right, solve problems, and it allowed me to work at my own pace, and it helped me realize that that I was not unable to learn. I just learned differently, right, and that experience is the major reason why I founded Kai's Education. So we develop tools that allow coding and STEM resources to give students the opportunities for their future careers. And and our goal is not just to teach kids to code; it's how to use new technology. And we want every student to feel included, capable, and confident as a learner.
Awesome.
So I'm Ronelle. I'm the CEO and co-founder. And probably go back, Bruce and I, we've been friends for about 26 years. So I've always known, Mr. ADHD and can't focus on everything. But when he, told me over the years, and then he told me he's got this new little robot, and I saw it, and I was just like, man, this is so cool. We really, really need to get this into the schools. And sort of my previous lives, I've developed some games, and I was sort of in the TV industry and making advertising and stuff like that. So yeah, Karen, I know all about editing and everything. But Bruce and I spoke, and I'm like, hey man, I can sell this. I can get this into schools. We have to get kids more engaged. And I think one of the things that sort of happened over the last, couple of years, and it's really a scary thing, is this whole, we sort of call it the 10-second economy, where kids just scroll, well, I don't want to read this, then I go to the next. And not just kids, even adults. And we just scroll, find the topic we really interested, and we don't care about the rest. And we only get engaged with what we want to learn. And we're going to have to flip that. It is really scary. And I think a lot of it is now, you can see the change, and we'll talk about it later about the screen free. But I think, technology, we're not going to get away from it. We're not going to get rid of it. We may, for the younger kids, try and navigate it a little bit differently. But I really think we need to make technology simpler and not so daunting. And, obviously that AI word is going to come in later in our discussion. But, for us, it's really, we want to be flexible, but across different subjects, and use one resource where you can then just go and do so many different things. And we always say we've got a low floor and a high ceiling.
Yeah.
If you've
That's
ever
so
met
cool.
Renelle, she's at the high ceiling part and I'm at the low floor part.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So the education space is changing rapidly. What are the biggest shifts that you're both seeing in classrooms across ANZ right now?
I think the most obvious shift is the arrival of AI, right? It's already changing how people work. I went through the drive-through the other day. It's changing how we order burgers. It's changing how, teachers teach. And how do we prepare students for that world and also manage the risks and responsibilities that come with this? And I don't think the answer is simply give students access to AI and call that AI in education. Students need to understand how to ask those good questions, evaluate the information, identify the mistakes, and how to use it responsibly. And that requires a lot of critical thinking, right? It requires digital literacy. It requires understanding how technology works, not just going, I'm going to be a consumer of AI. The second shift is that STEM and coding are no longer being treated as like specialist subjects for the special kids in the school, right? Schools are increasingly recognizing that computational thinking and problem solving are useful across math, science, literacy, design, and other subjects.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think schools are facing a significant challenge in keeping students engaged. And if you're not engaged, kids are not going to go to school. Absenteeism, schools then lose money. So really, that bigger picture has got a massive impact. And no matter what we're going to do with technology, students are going to be surrounded by technology even at home. So we have to change that expectations. And I like that, I think it should be called responsible artificial intelligence and not just AI. And I think we need to become more interactive and have that immediate and personalized experiences and share that. So it doesn't mean that every lesson needs to be entertainment or whatever, but it's engagement. I think teachers, when I grew up, it was like the teacher would stand in the front of a classroom and tell me what is 1 + 1. I think these days what you need to say, I'm going to give you a math question, how are we going to get to 2? And then work it backwards, and but I do agree, teachers are under considerable pressure. They're managing all sorts of ability lessons, curriculum, administration, and then you've got that whole wellness, and social emotional skills that you have to bring into the classroom. So as a result, teachers are looking for technology that is practical. They want something that they can understand quickly. They can just bring it in with the existing lesson plan. They don't want to get a product and then requires months on months to do training or things that don't work. And I need something separate for this subject matter. They
Yeah.
really want those stronger solutions that are the ones that support teachers that's already trying to overachieve in what they have to stand for.
Yeah, agreed. I think also we speak a lot about adjusting to students and their different varying abilities, but taking another step back, we also have a group of teachers out there that also have varying ability on where they're at with their walk with AI and what they're doing as well. So yeah, it's not about leveraging that and having to make everything engaging and having to create your entire lesson plans through AI, but I think it's more so how do we just meet that teacher and that student with where they're at, and then how can we educate and train them on what is actually out there that is beneficial to what they're doing as well. And it's such a crowded market at the moment. Like there's so many things to get lost in. So how do we get rid of that noise and actually use products that increase our productivity and help us actually create authentic, engaging lessons for our students as well?
Yeah, we got to use the technology to, reduce those barriers, right?
Yeah,
Not
agreed.
not create new barriers. We got to
Mm,
simplify and use technology to declutter and simplify it, and
yeah,
and and that is then when technology becomes beneficial.
yeah, that's right. And then that kind of helps us lead into this next question. And it's happening a lot in the Australian market, especially, but a lot of conversations around screen time in schools. So we're seeing some schools increase and not have a huge concern around screen time, but then we're seeing a lot really address the screen time within school hours. So, how do you guys see technology working alongside hands on learning rather than it replacing the hands on learning aspect?
Um, I think there's a hybrid approach. I think we can have both. And I think especially, I mean, when you look at the young ones, when you look at really sort of, primary school and stuff, I think the hands-on, we really still learn those tactile
Mhm.
experiences are super important. So I'm actually 100% supporting, countries like, Sweden and those guys that say, hey, I don't know if we need to bring back all the textbook and handwriting, everything, and just remove a screen.
Yeah,
I think there's ways that you can do it. You can still have the teacher using the interactive board, and they can show things and create interactive experiences in the classroom. But I'm for let's do some screen free, because I think we are skipping some developmental changes in kids that we
yeah,
are going to miss. And all of a sudden, I think already people are starting to say, apart from literacy and math, those schools are all down. And I think we have to increase that. I think one of the latest research, and that's really scary, is that kids stop talking and they don't know how to speak properly. So I think we're going to really have to look at those things and
yeah,
not just be on technology. We have to actually be one-on-one with students as well. So, technology should be an enabler. It shouldn't just be automatically, that's the lesson.
agreed.
Students need to build, move, go and play outside, touch physical objects, do some STEM activities. I mean, we talk about STEM. I'm all for STEAM, so I would like to
Yeah,
refer to it as STEAM because
yep,
arts is so, so important. So
yeah,
it's getting
agreed.
that balance. We
Hmm.
should not choose between physical learning and digital learning. The
Yeah,
best experience is to combine both.
both. Yeah, totally agree. Bruce, anything you wanted to add to that? Or
Yeah, I mean, coding is a good example, right? It's normally introduced through a screen, but students are heads down, right? And we've got to get students from heads down to face up and face those problems
yeah,
full on, and with the physical KaiBot, for example, students can placing coding cards, they collaborating together, they're building programs, they watch the robot carry out their instructions, and they can do that all without a computer screen. But if you actually got a CommBox there, then you can actually see it come to life, and the physical come to life in the digital. they can immediately see the relationships between commands and results, concrete to abstract learning. And when something doesn't work, which is good, right? Because
Yeah.
it tells them about why where they failed, and failure is not a negative word. And the robot's providing them the feedback. Students aren't just watching like a mouse or a cat jumping around the screen. They discussing, the sequence. They're predicting what their robot's going to do. They're testing and doing critical thinking.
I think it changes that social experience. I mean, I think this is where we need to get back to is, it's not just students sitting one-on-one and coding the robot. It's actually coming together and saying, what about this? Why not? How? Ask the questions. And no matter how much, we have to get kids to be able to start working in, even from a young age, in little groups, create collaboration, get them into teams, because we see when you get into the workforce, the people that can't work in a team, that's a problem. And I think we really need to get back to those 21st century skills as well.
Yeah, agreed. I think most of the reading and studies that I've done around the ideas of digital learning versus physical learning, it's always that hybrid of both that seems to land and actually manages to bring most of the children on that journey at the same time, depending on your best way of learning. But I think we really need to figure out what that hybrid mix of both looks like for us to get the most out of our students. Rolling into actually preparing students for the jobs of the future. It's something that's been a hot discussion in a lot of education conferences going on this year. But how do we prepare students for jobs that ultimately don't even exist yet? But in terms of your opinion and what you're seeing as well, what skills do you think schools should be focusing on developing today?
I mean, I think, we can't predict the future jobs, right? But we can know students will need to be adaptable. They'll need to solve unfamiliar problems. They'll need to, and they need to continue learning through their lives. And schools should focus on the problem solving, right? The critical thinking, creativity, the collaboration, resilience. And these are the skills that are going to remain valuable as the technology evolves. And doing, coding and robotics screen-free develops these skills naturally. Students break them into smaller parts. They test solutions. They identify the errors and their mistakes, and they build on them. And they learn that failure is not, that negative word. It's just a mistake, and you learn from it. And in an AI-driven world, students will need to ask questions and information and evaluate answers that make sound decisions. The goal is not to turn every student into a coder, right? That's not what we're about. It's to give them the confidence and the critical thinking skills and solve problems. I mean, we know that many future roles will require people who can collaborate, think creatively, and manage or direct more, one or more like AI agents, right? We're going to be, that's how I envision we're going to be working, is like we're going to have a fleet of AI bots below us that we orchestrate and problem solve and collaborate with. And I think those skills for the kids is going to be very powerful.
But I think it's creativity. For me, one of the most important things is AI. I don't think it can replace creativity. Creativity and emotions. I know robots are getting better and better, but it is still about that storytelling, no matter what. And I think that's what we need to bring in. Technology is often seen as it's a technical, very structured. That's how learning happens. But I think we need to really, really change that. And with creativity, if you creative, you want to share it with somebody, and that's where collaboration really comes in. And I think it is going, no matter what you study. And I think one of the things that I absolutely love, like with even not just KaiBot, but even with KaiLab, which is the other robot, is one scenario is there's a fire. Now, that fire can be on Mars. You're going to treat it. It can be in a warehouse. It can be in a smart city. So it's the same problem, but
Yeah.
the answer, the output, how you come to solve that problem is so different. And I think this is where we need to share ideas, divide responsibilities, listen to different perspectives, because I think listening is a problem that we're going to come up with. We all just want to talk, quickly see what you've seen, and we don't listen to others. So to build a successful team, I think collaboration, creativity is going to be key skills that you're going to need.
Yeah, agreed. We had our conference last week, our sales and marketing conference, and part of that was talking about what does the workforce of the future look like. And coming back to what you shared earlier, Bruce, there was a lot of conversation around orchestrating your human workforce and then your AI workforce. But the theme that kept coming back up was the ability to problem solve, the ability to think critically. And their skills that you have to learn. But the other was not to let it overrun your creativity. And so I think it's so important that we double down on those in our education learning areas, to be training those and encouraging that. And I think, again, that comes back to that
And
hybrid
just
focus.
following and just following up, that's where computational thinking is really good, right? Because it brings all these skills together. Like, in order to solve like a coding challenge, I know a lot of teachers might go, "Oh, coding, right? A scary word."
Yeah.
But but it doesn't have to, because we use it in math, right? In
Yeah.
fact, if you go math first, and then if you're a math teacher and you've never coded before, well, coding's going to be dead simple for you, right?
Yeah. Right.
But it allows those, your kids to predict those problems and solve those, and recognize the patterns, organize the information, create the logical sequences. It's those skills are so useful for those students and their future careers.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So on our hot topic of AI, which is a very much hot topic at the moment, and I see it impacting almost every industry at the moment as well. How do you see AI coding and partnering with CommBox interactive displays working together to create better learning experiences? And I think you're both well positioned to answer this, because you've seen this happen in classrooms many times. But yeah, it'd be awesome for you to share how that's impacting or allowing us to create better learning experiences.
I think, from my view, the teacher remains very central to the whole learning experience, right? A teacher makes the learning human, and AI is not replacing the teacher, right? AI again is just a bot that the teacher is manipulating. It's just like a teacher aid. Think of it like a teacher aid, and then the interactive display, obviously using the AI on the display, and that's where the collaboration comes in, and that becomes a hub to bring all these tools together and the students together, and that's where it's beautiful with KaiBot and CommBox, is because the kids can be like, problem solving the KaiBots without any computer. They can be coding, they can do if statements, all the logical things they can do. But then they can look up, right? They can see the CommBox panel, and they can see how it comes to life. And then the teacher can be asking all those questions and then using the tools to solve them.
I think the shared experience, it's super important, but I think there's something that's even greater than that, and it's inclusiveness.
Yeah.
I think for us to have a group of students, especially these days, that are so diverse, so different, and how does a teacher actually reach, you've got 30 little students sitting in your classroom, everybody is different. And how do we reach them? And I think actually with an interactive panel like CommBox, I think you can actually do so much more. I mean, we've seen where they were playing Conundrum, one of the little games on the CommBox. And it was this little 5-6-year-old kids, and they brought up the questions on the smart board, and they came up and they were answering. And then there was this whole discussion in the front of the class. And the one teacher said,
Awesome.
what was really interesting was like the introverts, all
Yeah.
of a sudden felt they've got a place where they can go, and I think that is super, super important, is having really be more accessible, and include everyone, because we learn differently. And I think a teacher just standing in front, that is just not enough. We've already got kids on a screen. Why don't we just put this big, massive screen and everybody can join in and go and do collaboration? We come back to collaboration and listen to the students as well, because they sometimes have got amazing ideas.
Absolutely. That's really cool and really great points. It's really encouraging that collaboration piece, which they're all going to need as they move into that workforce. For schools that are just beginning their, and we'll refer to STEAM or coding journey, what's one practical piece of advice you'd give teachers that they could implement tomorrow?
I would say start small,
Yeah.
and involve your students. We have seen this. We actually, a school got delivered some KaiBots, and the teachers were so busy, and they said, okay, here's students. And they gave the grade 6 students the robots, and they said, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to deliver this to the grade 2s. And it was so successful that they then said, we're going to do a parent evening, and the grade 5s is going to present it to their parents. And
Awesome.
that is engagement, because they felt they have got a role, they had a purpose, they could see the feedback, just like humans. We want feedbacks. Why don't we give it to the students? So I think involve your students is really, really important. And for the teacher, learn alongside. There's lots of teachers, they know coding, and it's, that's talking to the, converted already. But there is still, you have the teacher that does science, and they go, oh, we don't do coding. And we say, well, you can actually teach the cycle of a butterfly through coding. And like, what? Like, yep, we can do that.
Cool.
Or we've got a literacy, a book, reading a book and ask questions, code your robot around. So I think you can just do so much by just starting off really, really simple.
Yeah, that's cool. So Bruce, anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I think, teachers don't need to know every answer, right? One of the best things a teacher can say is, I'm not sure, let's test it out. Let's try it out. Let's ask the AI model. Let's do that, right? We don't have to be experts at everything. And students love discovery, right? They love to answer alongside the teacher, and shows them that the learning is not always about being correct. It's about asking questions and finding a way forward. So, yeah.
I think one of the really cool examples, there was a classroom, and the teacher said, okay, we're going to use AI today. So they ask a question, and then they said to the students, okay, keep questioning this AI model right to the end. And they're like, I think you've got it wrong. Try again. I think, no, I don't agree with you. No. And it was incredible, the engagement that the students came up with, the creativity, the questions they started to ask. And that's what we need to teach them, is how do we get the right narrative across? And I think that's a really, really cool skill that students are going to need to learn.
Absolutely. I think the art of curiosity is, it's playing the gray a little bit. Keep asking, what can we learn here? That's really cool. So looking ahead to the next 3 to 5 years, which is a statement I'd say we used to use a lot, and I'm a little bit hesitant to use now because it's the classroom, our workspaces are changing incredibly fast. But what do you think the classroom of the future should look like? And then how do we start to prepare for that now?
Um, well, I do know that, the amount of information that is being collected, right, on all of us. And what that means is that allows for very personalized tools to be used, right? Once you connect all the technology together, it can be very powerful and very personalized. And I think that's where the classroom of the future will be. Um, it'll be more flexible and very personalized, but at the same time collaborative. And I think AI is going to help, adapt the resources. It's going to provide feedback and support to students at different levels. And how I don't think the future classroom will consist of every student sitting alone with a headset on or a computer. Human interaction is the most valuable thing humanity has. And, we students will need to work in teams to solve, challenges and move between the physical, because we are physical beings, and the digital world.
Yeah, I'm going to throw it out a little bit. I'm going to say the next 3 to 5 years, I think it's going to be very different. I listened to an amazing webinar about green schools. Um, and it was fascinating. Where in primary, those early days, they didn't have technology, no screens, but the kids go out into the bush. They go down the river. They have hands-on experience. Even when they go to the playground, they were doing what touch the mat. What does the rope feel like? And it was these experiences, and then they would have little activities that happens around, and people like, oh, okay, I like working with water and animals. I like doing this. And isn't this how we're going to start drive those future? What is your interest? Because so often we hear students now, they finish school and they go, I don't know what I'm going to do, because it's so overwhelming. But if I like being outdoor, I like using my hands with tools, I like computers, I like gaming, isn't that just helping them a little bit, sort of creating where they need to go? So I think a really big focus, I think primary is going to stay screen free, and I would hope those things is really important. And then I think you're going to have to not have the traditional high schools. I think it's going to become very much, and the States is really driving towards that, have more career focused schools, like a lot of the magnet schools or the charter schools, where it's a STEM school, or it's an engineering, or it's woodworking, or it's something like that. So I think it's going to become more skill based.
Yeah.
And that's going to be good for the workforce. So
Agreed.
where universities fit in, that's another whole interesting subject. Let's not go there. But I think, there is a room for everybody. But the number one thing is, let's keep those 21st century skills, and let's drive engagement, and change the teacher standing in front of the class, talking to the students as a collaborative lesson, and use these interactive boards. I mean, you can do so much with a CommBox. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. Anything that you can do on a piece of paper, anything that you can do on your computer, you can do it on the CommBox. So, it just opens up the world, but really get students engaged.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the KaiBot does that extremely well. That blended mix of hands-on, learning together, problem solving, ticks all those boxes of everything we've discussed today. So one thing we've talked about today is about making technology practical and engaging. And what you touched on as well is start small. It doesn't need to be huge, and bring students on that journey with you to make it really easy for schools to adopt. And that's why when we spoke about starting this partnership, we were like, this totally makes sense. We both see and understand the education space very similarly. And in terms of how we want the educators to kind of start using this technology was very similar as well. So our partnership is, I think, to me, very important, because we're out there trying to give our educators information. So what else they might have their hands on. And so to make this more adaptable, and I guess starting small, that's where we've really wanted to come together and look at this promotion for the next few months or running into next year. So we'll look at this partnership in terms of on offer for our end users. For any schools that are purchasing 5 or more of the CommBox Classic S5 or Neo, they can register and see if they qualify for a complimentary KaiBot starter kit. And I think that is an awesome way for us to re-emphasize the starting small. It is such a good way for our teachers to get started with leveraging hands-on technology and how we can intertwine that into the classroom as well. So if there was one message you'd like to leave every teacher watching today to take away with, what would it be?
I think this partnership is gold, because both of our products complement each other, and they support different parts, but of the same learning experience. And CommBox is giving the teacher and the class a central place. It's like a little village. It's collaborative. We're working on the same solution. While KaiBot then takes that learning off their Chromebooks or their iPads, and it places it into the students' hands, right? And then the students are building. They predicting. They trying to figure out what the robot's going to do. And I think that then they heads up and they look at the CommBox, and it's just a perfect collaboration.
Yeah. I mean, I think involving the whole class, drive engagement, and bring inclusiveness. And, that inclusiveness is, in the past, you've had the teacher and there's 30 students and they have to go and check at each student what they're doing. You can actually now do that all in the CommBox. You can see what students are doing. And I think we have seen this where students that didn't want to participate, all of a sudden, like especially with KaiBot, you can put the 3D KaiBot world on the screen and you can have students so all those little gamers, the gaming is there. Then you can go the guy that physically wants to touch it, work with the cards, they can be, catered for. There's just so many ways that this is such a good way of working. This partnership is really, really good. And I think as the confidence teachers, it looks scary. I mean, the robot is only a tiny robot. The CommBox is a massive big screen. So let's put those two together.
Yeah.
And let's not limit them just to screen free. It's that hybrid. Some days it depends. Hey, if it's very rainy, let's do something else. But as their confidence grows, I think bring coding into every subject matter. I know it sounds strange, but I say coding is maths, coding is literacy, coding is social emotional skills. Like, with KaiBot, definitely go and look at Dragon of Disengagement. I mean, this is the coolest social emotional, interactive board game. And then you can cast and you can have it on the CommBox. Imagine defeating your dragon on the CommBox in your classroom. How cool would that be? So
Make the dragon look very big and scary.
that's not this learning journey is for every student. And let's make it, I know teachers hate the word fun, but hey, let's bring fun back into the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, where KaiBot is really good. It's got that low floor. It goes up to a high ceiling. It's completely screen free if you want it to be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't limit it, but we can also take it onto the screen. So you can grow with it, and as the confidence of the students grows as well. So yeah.
Well,
Powerful.
it's not technology. We don't use technology just for the sake of technology.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's have better outcomes. And I think that's what's really, really crucial.
Yeah, agreed. No, well, thank you both for your time today. It's been an awesome chat, and I'm very excited for running this promotion with you guys and making the technology actually deliver an outcome for our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was such a great conversation. Thank you, Tina, Renelle, and Bruce. Now, we also have something a little extra for you schools looking to bring more interactive hands-on learning into the classroom. For a limited time, schools purchasing 5 or more qualifying CommBox S5 or Neo interactive displays can register to see if they qualify for a complimentary KaiBot starter kit. This is a great way to extend learning beyond the display, bringing together interactive teaching and hands-on STEM experiences across areas like mathematics, literacy, science, and digital technologies. And it's not just the KaiBot itself. The kit includes the coding resources to get started, plus teacher onboarding support to help you bring it to the classroom. So, if your school is already planning a classroom technology refresh, or you think you might qualify, scan the QR code, follow the link on screen, and register your school. We would love to help you bring interactive learning to life. Now that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, and a huge thank you again to Tina, Ronelle, and Bruce for such a great conversation. As we mentioned, more details on our CommBox and KaiBot promotion, including how your school can qualify, will be sent out after today's webinar. So keep an eye on your inbox. Thanks again for joining us, and we can't wait to show you what KaiBot and the Classic S5 can do together. Have a great rest of your day.